A husband.
A prince.
A young girl. A lost but hopeful daughter. I fell in love.
I won my wife.
Dad went to work. After 29 years, her spark was fading.
She was my prize.
Deep down, I knew something was wrong. I had to fix it.
I set out on a journey.
He didn't come home. I've been blind and I've been selfish.
To find my love I did not know.
Where could he be?
We've all been lost.
Hi, and welcome to my show. Today I have three special guests that are going to talk about their different books. The books we'll be talking about are The Wedding, A Wrinkle in Time, and The Riddle Master of Head. First I'll be talking with Hannah. What's your book called, and why did the person you interviewed choose this book?
The book I read is called The Wedding by Nicholas Sparks, and she chose it because, and quote, I love reading romance novels and because it was the sequel to another one of my favorite books called The Notebook.
What were your personal thoughts before you read the book?
I was actually really excited because she talked very highly about it, and I enjoy reading cute romance novels, but this one ended up actually being a little different than the other ones that I read in the past. Instead of being really cheesy and like stereotypical, it had a more serious take on life, and it felt more real.
What's the main theme of your book?
The book is about the importance of marriage and commitment to the ones you love. An example of this is when Wilson says to his wife, I know I haven't always been the best husband either, I said quietly. Sometimes I wonder why you put up with me for as long as you have. Jane responds to this by saying, I love you, Wilson, and I know you love me. And if we're going to make it work between us, we're both going to have to give a little. Before I read this book, I thought love was just a feeling, but it's not. During my first interview with Emily, she said, love is not just a feeling, but more of a choice. At first, I didn't really understand what she meant by a choice, but while reading the book, it made more sense to me, and I definitely agree with that.
What's an important lesson that you learned from reading this book?
Well, I've always had this fantasy of thinking that I'll know I'm in love when I get the feeling that, as Emily describes it, all rainbows and butterflies that most romance books stereotype about. I feel like that after reading these kinds of books, most girls might believe that that's the only way love works. We read a book or watch a movie about a perfect romance and automatically think that that's how life works. But there's so much more to love and marriage than just feelings. Jane gives a good example of this in the book by telling her husband the reasons why she loves him and why she married him. She said to him, why I married you? Well, you were honest and hardworking and kind. You were polite and patient and more mature than any guy I'd dated before. And when we were together, you listened in a way that made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. You made me feel complete, and spending time with you just seemed right. I think the lesson my book taught me was to have more sense of reality of what I need to look for in a potential future husband, like what Jane did by having a lot of reasons as to why she married Wilson.
So how did this book change your perspective on life?
Throughout this book, Wilson has been trying to gain back the love he believed he had lost from his wife, and because of his determination and commitment to her, he eventually did. His father-in-law, Noah, encouraged him by giving him advice on how to get her back. He told him the expert's advice on improving marriage to focus on the 4 A's: attention, appreciation, affection, and attraction. Even though this book does in the end have a happy ending, it took a lot of time and hard work for Wilson. Overall, this book has given me a sense of reality of what a real marriage and what real love should look like. There are so many concepts to love. It's about commitment, compromise, knowing each other's flaws, but loving them anyways. And to wrap this up, Wilson says at the end of the book, yet looking back, I believe that if I've done one thing right, it has been to love my wife throughout our years together, and that's what I want to have in my future husband too.
Thanks, Hannah. I'm glad you were on the show.
Thank you.
Hi, Cammy, and welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You brought A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline. So going on with the theme of the book, what's a good lesson portrayed in the book?
One good lesson is, as my mom puts it, life is fragile and we have to be careful of the choices we make. In the end of the book, Mrs. Wexit says, oh my darlings, I'm sorry we don't have time to say a proper goodbye to you. You see, we have to, but they never learned what it was that Mrs. Who and Mrs. Which had to go do. For there was a gust of wind and they were gone. I think the lesson is that you really do need to cherish everything that you have because you never know when it's going to be taken from you.
That's a good one. Do you have another one?
Yeah, actually. Another one would probably be the sacrifices that we make for the people that we love. And an example is when Charles Wallace looked quickly at Meg and Calvin, and then said as though to himself, I have to, and focused his clear blue eyes on the red ones of the man in the chair. I asked my mom about this quote, and she said, I think when you love somebody that much, especially family, it becomes more than a conscious thing. I mean, you do what you have to.
Right. That's another good one. One of my favorites is when Meg talks about how you have to have unhappy times in order to have happy times.
Yeah, I like that one too. She says, but nobody's ever happy. Maybe if you aren't happy sometimes, you don't know how to be happy. I completely agree with this quote and its meaning. So does my mom. Actually, I remember her telling me we have to embrace all the seasons in our life because they all have lessons to teach us. Lessons aren't always happy, but they all have an effect on our lives.
Exactly. And to wrap up this book talk, give me your favorite lesson learned.
My favorite lesson learned is probably just that you always have to be brave and, have faith that everything's going to end up okay. Like when Meg asked Mrs. Witch, but what's going on and what's going to happen? Oh, please, Mrs. Witch, tell us what's going to happen. And she replies with, we will continue to fight.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on my show.
Thanks for having me.
So, Liam, you read The Riddle Master of Head. Has this book changed the way you act in everyday life?
This book has definitely changed the way I act. There's been times where you can realize that you build yourself a wall and not be able to find a way out. And I have a quote to explain that. One day the Lord of Head decided to venture out of his lands, and then he traveled down his wall 3 times but found no gate to let him out. And slowly he realized that he himself had built that wall. I have also learned to be decisive. There will be times where you need to make a decision before the time passes. My interviewee said, this book has taught me that there are times where it's best to be decisive and make a decision early before the time passes. I agree with what my interviewee said, and it's best to make the decision early before being too late.
After finishing this book, has it changed the way you've approached problems in life?
It's taught me that you have to prioritize what you believe in. My interviewee said that there are things in this world that you have to sacrifice, and that those decisions can be tough to make. And you'll have to prioritize what you think is important. I agree with what she said. There will be choices you have to make, and that sometimes the problems can be overwhelming. And that there's a quote. A little cold breeze moved across the river. His fire shivered under it. He realized that how tiny the fire was against the enormous darkness. A fear prickled over him. I agree with this quote. There are times where problems can overwhelm you, but it's better to face them rather to let them bother you.
What has been the most important lesson you've learned?
I think the most important lesson I've learned is that you should try to prioritize family over everything else. I need to see them before I leave. I don't care what I have to do. I agree with it. You should try to prioritize family first. It's nice to know that your family is there for you and that they care for you. You could have died in the tower for Pete's sake over a stoop crown left us watching for the ghost of you to return. I agree with this quote. It's important to know that someone is there for you, and you have someone to rely on. There are times that you've been away from home for too long and you start to connect back with your homeland. As he played, he began to smell oak burning in the fire before him, saw the light around him wash over the walls of Akron. The song woke a piece in him that he knew was in head that night.
Awesome, Liam. Thanks. Now that we're all together, do you think there is a similar theme between all of your books? What is it?
Yeah, all of our books have shown us the importance of family and putting them first.
My book taught me that you should always pursue the one or ones you love, even if there are dangerous obstacles in the way.
My book taught me the real importance of family and that you do what you have to do for the people that you care most about.
And finally, my book showed me the importance of marriage and staying together even when times are hardest. Thank you for watching this fantastic presentation. Goodbye!